Hi, my name is Sharone Lifschitz, and I am the daughter of Oded and Yocheved Lifschitz, founding members of Kibbutz Nir Oz, where I grew up. I live in London since many years, but my heart is also very much with my community in Israel.
So obviously it's going to be the 2-year anniversary of October 7th in a few days. So would you be able to talk me through your experience of October 7th, your thoughts, your emotions from the first news you got about your parents, and then the days, weeks that ensued after that?
On the 7th of October, I was on the way for a day out with my family when we sat on the train around 7 a.m. And I opened the news and found out something is happening, which is a recurrent event. I called my mom and she didn't answer. I called my dad, he didn't answer. And then I called my brother, my oldest brother, and from his voice I knew something really big is happening. And we never ended up going anywhere that day. We arrived and then came back. And by the end of the day, we have seen footage of the kibbutz being ransacked. I knew of quite a lot of people that were dead. Through the day, I thought everybody are going to die. I thought there was hundreds of civilians and terrorists in there. And towards the evening, we found out some survived, and we started waiting, the agonizing wait to hear what happened to my parents. And we couldn't find them. They weren't found, and many others weren't found. Almost 100 people. Some were too badly burnt, some were taken hostage. And in the weeks that follow, we desperately awaited news. We started an international campaign to let the world know what is happening, what happened, what took place. At that time, we were hopeful that hostages will be returned really quickly. My mom was returned after 17 days, but my father was not.
Mm-hmm. And how did you process, because of course for a while you didn't know the state that your father was in, so it took a while before you found out that he had been killed. So can you talk a bit about the wait? You know, obviously it must have been agonizing. How did you cope with that?
I think my father was returned on day 502. So we knew for quite a while that his chances were very slim because he was elderly and frail. But until you have that forensically told, you don't know, and you fight for him as if he is alive. And you fight for all the other hostages. There are still 48 hostages, 20 or so of them are presumed alive. And I know some of them from the day they were born. From my community, there are 9 hostages, 4 of them we are waiting to come back alive, and 5 to bury. In some ways, I haven't started processing what happened because we've had to stabilize the boat, fight for those that we can still save. In other ways, I was really supported by the community here and by so many people in Israel. You cannot go through that without the amazing support of so many people.
Could you also describe the day that you were reunited with your mom? That must have brought some sort of relief.
My mom, Hamas put a note on Telegram on the 21st of October saying that he tried to release my mom and Nurit Cooper, and Israel said no. And at that moment, I just thought, then she is alive. And until that moment, I did not believe she was alive. We had no news from her. I looked for her in every piece of video I could find, and I could not find her. The house was burnt down to nothing. We didn't know if she was injured or not. We knew there were shots through the door. In effect, they hit my father, but not my mother. And when she came back, I was frantically going to the airport on the underground to catch the last flight to Israel so that I can be with her. The whole day we thought it might happen, it might not. And then I realized I'll have to go. So together with the rest of the world, I saw her being released on CNN or BBC. And just seeing her in these funny clothes and so with it was wonderful. And my mom is feisty. She has her set in belief, and to see her turn around and acknowledge the humanity and demanding the humanity of that paramedic or terrorist or whatever he was her showing her full integrity. The next morning, 5 a.m., I arrived in the hospital, and when I arrived, my mom was asleep, and she sleeps like a baby, and it is really hard to explain what that moment meant. In some ways, she was reborn.
Your father was a peace campaigner. He drove sick Palestinians to seek treatment in Israel, from what I understand. I'm sure you were raised in a household where there was probably a lot of conversation about building bridges and peace. So how did you kind of grapple with the reality that the same people that your father had been trying to build bridges with were the same people that ended up kidnapping him and murdering him? How do you grapple with that, and where are you right now with that journey in your mind?
First of all, I think they're not just one people. There are 2 million people in Gaza, and many of them did the worst thing imaginable. But not all of them. And also, for me, Israel has supported Hamas. My father was always against Hamas. He never ever believed that a jihadist organization can be an asset. And this is something the government of Israel did for a long time. So I think my father was also continually fighting against the kind of alliance between the government of Israel and Hamas. And he proved right, because you cannot manage it. You cannot let such a horrific organization stay in power. You cannot avoid killing those at the top and thinking that they are not going to attack. There was a misconception, and the misconception was that Hamas is not going to attack. The people living on the fence knew who Hamas was, and they were always against it. But we also know other people there, and I have met since other people there. Not everybody feel that.
So you would say you still hold that same belief that we should be working towards peace with the Palestinians, as the same way that your father's trying to build bridges. You've not strayed from that at all.
I think we have to protect ourselves. I come from a community that was not protected on that day. The break in my heart at what happened when so many of my community lost their life, and there was no army there. There was nothing protected until the last civilian left. 7 hours that nobody came to save them. That's a huge change of concept to reconciliate. And I believe that in the end, each of us wants peace in our own heart and in the world. Do I believe we should kind of open the gates and let everybody do? No. Do I believe we should dismantle the army? No. Do I believe that in our action we can bring about a better world? I do.
And kind of on a lighter note, are you able to share some of your favorite memories with your father?
My father was a very busy person that absolutely made each of us feel very loved, very special. He would have the time of day for each of his children and grandchildren, and his neighbors' children and his neighbors' grandchildren. And coming up to 7th of October is incredibly tough for all of us who lost loved ones. It's really, really tough. I go back to the house, to my father playing the piano, to people dancing to his music, to moments with my son and with my friend's daughter, Noya, that was murdered on the 7th of October, to the house, which I feel was, our house was a little kingdom, very modest kingdom, but our kingdom. And there's something about how my parents made everybody that came to the house feel so loved. I miss that.
You went to Downing Street and you met Keir Starmer, and he expressed extreme outrage and sadness at what had happened to your father. Yet a few days ago, the UK recognized the Palestinian state, and obviously a lot of people are very outraged, and they say this is a reward for Hamas. Some people say this is something that should have happened, but maybe not right now. So I was wondering if you could give me your thoughts on the recognition, and if you think this is a betrayal or you think this is a step forward for peace.
I think it's complicated. We have no good options. I know I am between here and Israel. At the time that Keir Starmer invited the hostage families to number 10, my friends in Israel were standing outside the Prime Minister of Israel home, and he didn't come out, and they put them in kind of fences, and the hostage families are heartbroken. The Israeli government has gone back to war. The Israeli government against the IDF has suggested we move further and put the life of the hostages in risk. These are very, very tough time for hostage families. And many of them feel that the government of Israel, not the IDF, but the government of Israel has given up on them. We are petrified of what is happening in Gaza and how it endangered the hostages which we know were brought up to the surface. It's brutal. And in that constellation, I don't feel that the recognition of Israel, of Palestine, is going to kill hostages. I feel that the war in Israel, that Israel is waging on Gaza with Hamas and against Hamas. And I think what I want the government here to do is put more pressure on Hamas, a lot more pressure on Hamas. I think we can do that. I think we should not be afraid to put more pressure on Hamas. I think we should not be afraid to push back against people in this country that explain Hamas away. You cannot explain what they have done. I have seen the people that came to Israel to see what happened to my kibbutz. I have seen the people that came to Israel and spoke to the survivors. You cannot explain a horrific terrorist organization like Hamas. You have to fight them in any way. You have to fight any expression of support for them in this country. But recognition of a state of Palestine is not, to my mind, above all a reward for Hamas, because Hamas wants the annihilation of Israel. It can say, it can put a braver face on it, but it is not in any way wishing for a two-state solution. I believe that Trump is right to push for that. I believe that we have to find a way to have secure borders, and that will happen through a deal with moderate Arab countries, with others, that will bring security and safety for my community.
obviously 2 years on, we're still at war, and anti-Semitism has gotten stronger than ever, as we saw what happened in Manchester yesterday, just one example. How do you see the future for Jews in the diaspora, especially in London, where you live? Do you think that we're safe here? How do you feel personally?
I think it's a really big moment of change around the world, in Israel. I belong to loads of groups, WhatsApp groups, and the groups in Israel. Many people feeling unsafe in Israel and wanting to move abroad. And many people in the UK and in other communities feel unsafe in Europe and they want to move abroad. So I see both sides feeling extremely frightened of a future. I think what I wish is for people to remember that we can affect the situation and that we must find ways to affect the situation. I feel that I take huge amount of encouragement from my community and the way they use the pain to bring about action, to rebuild the kibbutz. And in some ways, I also have met many people in this country, including Muslim people, that do wish for a peaceful life and for a peaceful life for the people of the region where I come from. And I think we have to insist on making alliances. Do I feel it's safe and secure? No, but the world is not. The world is really changing. What worries me most is hate, is the way social media is affecting the way we think, putting us in a very little box. I think that when we lift our eyes and look each other in the eyes, like my mom did, you actually can make other people hear you. We are so being manipulated to think that the other side are all evil, that we are the all evil, people hate is Jewish or Israeli people and we are all this or we are all that. Let's just remember that we are human beings and they are human beings and that we can and must, calm the flame so we can work from a place that is not just full of hate and fear, because hate and fear are not going to get us where we need to go.
What is something that you have been doing and that you hope others will start doing in order to, find our shared humanity?
I speak from the heart as much as I can. I speak from the heart. I remind whoever can listen that if anybody has a reason to hate, it's my community. And yet I see them. And it's not hate that is going to build the kibbutz back. It's not hate that is going to make the big, big hole in our heart kind of feel better. We lost so much. Among us, I'm supporting my friend who lost her daughter and mother. She's not full of hate. You cannot recover with hate. And she's very full of fear, but the fear is that we lose that ability to see the human in us, to feel that broken heart.
Yesterday, there was a terror attack in Manchester. 2 people died and there's several critically injured in a hospital at a synagogue on Yom Kippur. What feelings did this evoke for you, another terror attack against the Jewish people?
First of all, it's very scary. And it's very upsetting, and I think that a lot of people have to think how they speak about us and what they allow themselves and how much hate they engage in. And my heart is obviously with them as somebody whose life was upended one day, and being from a community that lost so many people, it brings you back to that. It scares you. But there is no but to it. There's just the feeling that we go on, that we don't let us, for me, from the very first moment, I felt this is really serious. And hate is not going to take me there. Love, compassion, shared humanity, the ability to support each other through it, the ability to know that even when we lose our loved ones, there's reasons to go on, there's reasons to build again, there's reasons to find solace in our other communities, and sometimes you have to sit with your broken heart and just feel it. Feel what you have lost. Know that it's not going to come back.
A lot of Jews right now are feeling very scared, especially after the events of yesterday. So what if you could say something to Jewish people who are feeling scared, just about living in the world in general, as someone who in the past 2 years has been grappling with this grief and overcoming the hardship of having your parents kidnapped, losing your father to terrorists, what would you say to them? A kind of a message of strength or resilience?
כל העולם כולו גשר צר מאוד. The whole world is a very narrow bridge, and the most important is not to be afraid. I used to sing that song in Hebrew to my son when he was a baby. It is a very scary time, and at one point you think, maybe I could just hate, maybe I could just rage, maybe I could just destroy, maybe I should. And it's very easy to feel that, because we're feeling increasingly isolated. We're feeling that so many people do not see our pain. But there's always a way forward. There's always people also, and I've had many friends that are not Jewish that have stood by me very firmly. And we have to also see those that came toward us, and those who do offer us the friendship and love we deserve. And I think it's a tough moment. Jews in these countries are very used not to criticize Israel, and I think Israel needs the Jews of the world to stand for what we expect of this government here, which is democracy, which is rule of law, which is humanity. And the Israeli government is very, very problematic. There is a big fight happening in Israel. And we have to understand that people are looking. It's a very tough moment in history, and it's up to us. We had many, the good years, if you go back to Pharaoh's dream, and now we have been having the last 2 years, and they've been extremely difficult, and we have to be tolerant of each other. We have to know that we don't have all the answers. We have to accept that there's pain on the other side too. And we have to accept there's pain in our hearts.
And what can we do, as Jewish people to continue keeping the memories of the victims of October 7th alive, of your father, of, your neighbors, your childhood friends from the kibbutz, of all the other people who were killed? What can we keep doing, be it social media, be it through making speeches and protests or petitioning our respective governments? So what can we keep doing to keep the memory of those victims alive?
Support initiatives. Keep them in your heart, full of love. Don't hate anybody for their memory. It doesn't help. It kind of destroys the beauty of these people and what they stood for. So for me, it's very important for me to think about my father without hate. I feel that we are at the moment of change, and the Jewish people have survived for thousands of years by, facing reality to some extent. I come from builders. We built, my parents built a kibbutz, and they knew it was a dangerous border. They got on and lived life and lived the most full and meaningful life they could. They really lived life. And I find that an incredibly powerful thing. My father lived so much in his life, did so much, engaged with so many people. He would always be with the grandchildren, not with the adult talking at the table. Just give more attention to your loved one, give more attention to other people. This is to remember. This is for my father, definitely, if I take something from him, is really remembering how much he engaged to it, and how much, therefore, even with everything he owned gone, he left so much, such a big, footprint in the world. I find that so inspirational. I wish other people can feel that. I think we have to believe, actually, that peace is possible in our own heart. Hate is a very powerful feeling. It's a very strong emotion, and it can be very rewarding, especially if you are on your Instagram account or your TikTok. I think staying a little bit calm and collected, and knowing that the way forward, that peace demands sacrifice too, but the way forward is beautiful when we open our heart to our own pain too, and when we find alliances. There are a lot of hate in the world. I don't ask you to go and speak, but I also met amazing people, even Palestinians that wrote to me. And we have to find a way forward. We will find a way forward.